when you think about measuring the greenhouse gas emissions related to an organization, first you have to set a system boundary. What is the organization? How do you define it? And then you divide the scopes into three. So the first is your scope 1 emissions, which are your direct emissions. Those are the emissions that are related to you directly procuring your services. So if you had a trucking company, those are the emissions related to you driving the trucks that you own on the road. And then the scope 2 is your indirect emissions. This is energy that you're purchasing from the grid, heat, gas, so on and so forth. But the third category of emissions is called scope 3, and this is becoming like the hot topic. I think everyone is interested in scope 3 decarbonization because scope 3 is everything else. Everything that is not direct or indirect, what might that be? That is your supply chain. So of all the things in scope 3, the hardest one for people to get their arms around from a measurement and decarbonization perspective is the supply chain.
Well, so making this real, like your box of crackers, right? If you look at the list of ingredients, you're gonna have to measure where the carbon emissions are coming from for each of those ingredients, the box itself. Like that's a lot to measure.
It's a lot to measure. And if you are any consumer company, whether you're making crackers or you're making sneakers, or you're making watches, 90% or more of your emissions typically come from scope 3. So if you've set a net zero goal, meaning that you want your organization to be at net zero by 2030, and 90% of that needs to come from your scope 3, then you really need a tool that helps you to do that. And so the product decision that we made at Planet Forward was to build a set of tools that was on top of a very rich data set that I acquired, and we can talk a bit about the role of M&A in startups, that allowed me to be able to measure scope 3 with much more rigor than incumbent solutions. So that was like a product decision. There was also a go-to-market decision involved in that, right? So do we play vertically, meaning we're obsessed with consumer businesses, which is, by the way, massive markets, food, fashion, beauty, or do we go horizontal and work with data companies and banks and consulting companies? And we made a very aggressive decision to take a vertical approach because of the product market fit. So the product that we designed is very good at decarbonizing scope 3, so supply chains. And that doesn't really matter if you are a data company. You don't have a big supply chain, but it matters a lot if you are PepsiCo or Unilever. And so the product decision and the go-to-market decision were hand in hand. Yeah.